Welcome to The Explainer. If you're joining us, it means you like to look under the hood of how our world actually operates. Today, we're unpacking a massive shift in how we work. We're talking about the jump from traditional, loyalty-based employment, the kind where you sat at the exact same desk for 30 years, to today's totally borderless global workplace. We're going to explore exactly how this shift is rewriting the unwritten rules of our careers, and importantly, not just in the US, but all around the globe. Okay, let's dive right into this. Does work feel, well, a little more transactional to you today? Like you're just a Slack icon to your boss, or maybe a temporary resource no matter what your actual title says? If you're nodding your head right now, you absolutely aren't alone. Conventional wisdom, backed by a ton of recent data, suggests that workers and firms increasingly feel like they just want to extract what they can from each other and then move on. We're going to validate that vibe you might be feeling, because it's not just your imagination. It is a measurable structural reality of the modern economy. For decades, there was this implied handshake deal. Work hard and you will always have a job with us. But for so many people today, sitting on either side of the employer-employee divide, this old handshake deal now sounds like a totally hollow platitude from a bygone era. That archetype of the post-war employee working for a single firm their entire life, eventually retiring with a pension and a shiny gold watch, yeah, that hit its high-water mark back in the 1970s. Today, that loyalty has seriously eroded, replaced by a fluid and, let's be honest, sometimes far more cynical reality. So here is a quick roadmap for this explainer. We'll hit 1, the unwritten rules of work, 2, tech and the autonomy paradox, 3, the global remote shift, 4, the rise of the digital nomad, 5, cross-cultural workforce realities, and finally 6, finding a global equilibrium. Let's get to it. All right, jumping right into section 1, the unwritten rules of work. To really get a grip on this, we need to talk about what organizational behavior expert Denise M. Rousseau calls the psychological contract. This is basically the implied bargain that goes way beyond your formal paperwork. Sure, you get paid for your labor. That is the legal contract. But the psychological contract, that covers the interpersonal niceties, the mutual care, the expected career progression. It's essentially the difference between just cashing your paycheck and actually feeling like your boss cares about your future. And right now, that specific unwritten contract is fracturing. Which brings us to section 2, tech and the autonomy paradox. So why is this happening? Well, this declining loyalty isn't just about bad attitudes. It is a massive structural shift. The pandemic basically served as a wrecking ball that ignited a demand for extreme flexibility, and we're still dealing with the whiplash. Workers are prioritizing their own well-being and autonomy way above corporate allegiance. Plus, when your pay doesn't even match inflation, that psychological contract doesn't just bend, it completely breaks. People aren't picking up side gigs just because they hate their primary jobs. They're doing it to survive. Now, what's really interesting to look at here is this number. Just showing up to a traditional office costs an employee about $862 a month on average. That's factoring in commuting, dry cleaning, buying those sad overpriced desk salads. That is exactly double the $431 average monthly cost of working remotely. When you combine inflation with the mandate to spend twice as much money just to sit in a fluorescent-lit cubicle, well, it drives massive dissatisfaction and just chips away at any lingering corporate loyalty. Let's zoom out a bit for section 3, the global remote shift. Because of these frictions, we can no longer just use remote work as a catch-all term. We really have to view the modern workforce as 3 completely distinct categories. First, you've got the in-country remote worker. They live in the same country as their employer, maybe even the same city, but they rarely see the office. Then you have the hybrid worker, perpetually carrying their laptop back and forth. And finally, the digital nomad, someone who resides in a completely different country from where their employer is actually based. These folks aren't just a pandemic fad. They are permanent fixtures in the global economy now. And this brilliantly illustrates how these realities overlap. You've got traditional employees sharing virtual space with nomads all day long. Because these boundaries are blurring and everyone interacts through the exact same digital interface, workers are waking up to how incredibly easy it is to jump ship for better global opportunities. I mean, think about it. When everyone is just a square tile on a video call, the mental leap to work for a company in London instead of your hometown really isn't that big of a leap at all. Which perfectly sets up section 4, the rise of the digital nomad. So the crucial point here is the sheer explosion of this group. US digital nomads alone jumped from 7.3 million to a staggering 10.9 million in just one single year between 2019 and 2020. We're talking about a massive pool of highly skilled talent actively decoupling their physical geographic location from their economic output. Let's see how this builds into a rather bizarre cross-border reality. The digital nomad physically sits and lives in one country, but their legal employer exists in another entirely. This completely shatters that localized handshake deal we talked about earlier. When your boss is operating under one nation's economic assumptions, but you're buying your groceries under another's, that requires a totally new framework for how employers and employees even relate to one another. Now, the appeal here is totally obvious. But beyond the beautiful sunsets and the laptop on the beach aesthetic, the real driver is geo-arbitrage. Imagine earning a high-tier New York salary, but paying rent in a super affordable coastal town abroad. For employers, this is actually a massive non-pecuniary benefit. They can offer a highly attractive lifestyle perk, keep income satisfaction high, and potentially reduce their own overhead. It looks like a total win-win at first glance. But contrast that beautiful sunset with the harsh, often terrifying web of compliance realities. When you cross borders, you trigger immediate income tax and double taxation risks. You trigger Social Security nightmares like navigating European A1 certificates. And critically, you risk severe labor law misclassifications. Imagine the sheer panic an employer feels realizing they might owe back taxes and massive penalties in a country they don't even technically operate in, all because a rogue nomad employee decided to log in from Paris for 6 months. All right, moving into Section 5, cross-cultural workforce realities. This is absolutely crucial because a lot of the current conversation around remote work is incredibly US-centric, focusing mostly on domestic hybrid setups. But a true global psychological contract has to account for deep cultural factors. Concepts like power distance, how much authority an employee naturally expects a boss to wield, or individualism versus collectivism. You literally cannot just copy-paste an American HR policy into a global workforce and expect it to work. What feels like empowering autonomy to a US worker might feel like stressful abandonment to someone from a culture with high uncertainty avoidance. We also really need to build some geographical empathy for the specific friction points non-US workers face. Contrast the American nomad seeking a picturesque beach with the non-US nomad facing weak passport barriers. For many, global mobility presents massive legal walls. They might be forced into visa parking, teleworking from a third-party country just to wait out endless visa backlogs. Plus, there's a very real risk of exploitative employer practices abroad. Without local labor unions, some companies might use a nomad's informal arrangement to deny them fair pay or essential Social Security benefits. And that brings us to our final part, Section 6, finding a global equilibrium. So what's the fix? Well, we are seeing massive structural adaptations at the state level. Over 41 countries and territories now offer some form of digital nomad visa. Dubai's remote working visa scheme, for instance, is actively courting this borderless workforce with zero income tax and streamlined applications. Governments are waking up to the fact that capturing this demographic is like striking economic gold. It's a literal global talent war to inject highly skilled professionals into local economies. But to actually balance the scales and make this work long-term, experts say we need rigorous coherency in international law. Bridging the gap between employer demands and digital nomad realities means we need centralized government portals to cut the red tape. We need clear tax exemption rules to stop double taxation dead in its tracks. And crucially, we need more bilateral Social Security agreements so workers don't suddenly lose their safety nets just because they crossed a border. The psychological contract has irrevocably changed. It's no longer just about a handshake in a local office. It is a complex, cross-border, legally intricate web of mutual expectations. So I'll leave you with this to ponder. How will your organization or even your own career adapt its unwritten rules for a completely borderless world? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer today. Keep learning, keep questioning, and we'll see you next time.